You are listening to the Rank and File Podcast, Episode 1, From Kites to Killers, the Evolution of Drone Warfare.
Welcome to the Rank and File Podcast. I'm Tyler Brown. I'm currently a cadet in the Army Reserves, and prior to this, I was an active duty combat engineer.
And I'm Tyler Randall, lifelong lower enlisted, currently a specialist in the Army Reserve, and previously I was a United States Marine Corps veteran, combat engineer, and combat marksmanship instructor.
Long before drones, helicopters, jets, or even biplanes took to the skies, ancient generals were already trying to control the sky using silk, bamboo, and string.
Thousands of years before the Predator drone, armies were already weaponizing the skies with kites.
Our goal today is to look at how the tools of war have evolved and what they mean for the boots on the ground today. Today we'll be tracing the history of aerial warfare, from the first kites flown in battle to how drones are reshaping the battlefields right now in Ukraine and beyond.
Kites, balloons, biplanes, jets, helicopters, and drones alike taught soldiers something new about control, fear, and adaptation on the battlefield.
So let's start at the very beginning. Long before combustion engines or radar, ancient China, 200 BC.
This is when commanders first decided to use aerial assets in the war.
So aerial warfare began with observation and fear, not firepower. In the beginning, they had three main purposes, and that was range finding, signaling and communication, and psychological warfare.
PSYOP? They were
Indeed.
using kites for PSYOP. Okay, I got to hear this.
We'll get into it. So with range finding, commanders would use kites to measure distance from their camp or position to enemy walls. They would let out the string until the kite was above the target, and then they would measure the line length to calculate range for siege weapons and arrows. With signaling and communication, this comes more so not directly from the text that we'll have in the sources below, but secondhand sources and folklore. Different colors, heights, or motions sent coded messages to other friendly positions, working as a visual Morse code before radios, with some ancient text mentioning whistles being attached for audible signals.
It's kind of like throwing up a white star cluster, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just a very, the early stages of that, you could say.
Rudimentary.
Exactly. And then moving into the psychological warfare. Kites would be flown at night with lanterns to look like spirits in the sky, or flutes and pipes to create haunting, whistling tones. And with that, to kind of give an idea of what kind of superstitions existed at that time, based off of some of the research I did, when commanders and troops would move out onto the battlefield, they would bring an oracle with them. And if the commander talked with the oracle and it basically came down to like, hey man, I got a good feeling about this. We're going to crush it today. They'd send it. They get after it. But if it was like, no, everyone dies tomorrow, commanders just be like, all right, and boot, scoot, and boogie out of there. So the idea of, and they've never seen anything like this before, but lanterns flying over enemy encampments with flutes and pipes to create like haunting, whistling tones definitely freak some people out.
Similar to like the Mongols when they would just set random fires to make their forces look larger to a conquering, like when they were going to conquer a town or something like that.
Yeah, just to have some kind of psychological impact on the enemy force.
So this oracle, would this be S6? Because nobody really knows like who they are or where they're at. And they can kind of see the future and divine things. Sorry.
This is the earliest written history of S6. So the earliest written record of a kite being used in warfare is from General Han Zin around 200 BC. And he actually used a kite to measure how far to tunnel under an enemy fortress wall.
Dang, talk
And
about
then
recon. Golly.
the final note for kites, the city of Weifeng, China. It is considered the birthplace of the military kite. And now they host the World Kite Festival.
So everybody's just using their kites as like to stay out of range of one another like all day. Like stay on your set. A lot of tunnels being dug during the Weifeng kite festival.
Once humans realized what the view from above could do, the next question was obvious. How do we get up there ourselves? And that's where balloons changed everything.
It sounds like something a French would do.
As a matter of fact, in 1794, the French Aerostatic Corps used hydrogen-filled balloons to observe Austrian troop movements, making this the first ever organized aerial reconnaissance unit in history. Their balloon, I'm probably going to mispronounce this, L'Entrepenant. I don't speak
L'entrepenant.
French. What Randall said. It stayed aloft for hours, providing real-time reports by dropping written notes or using flag signals. And then, during the American Civil War, the Union Balloon Corps under Thaddeus Lowe used tethered balloons of telegraph lines for live artillery spotting. This
Jeez.
balloon was the first eyes in the sky, making it the first ever ISR platform.
I mean, yeah, but I bet the French just used it so they know which way to run away.
Not sure if there's any historical accounts of that, but there might be.
I mean, so stable observations really was not enough. People wanted speed, mobility, and the ability to strike. Enter the biplane. So early biplanes were made out of wood, fabric, wire. They were fragile yet revolutionary. And at the start of World War I, aircraft were used only for reconnaissance, with pilots literally waving at each other midair with hand signals. And within months, they started carrying pistols, rifles, and mounted machine guns, combining flying and combat. And in 1915, Anthony, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Fokker invented the synchronization gear, allowing machine guns to fire through spinning propeller blades. So basically what this would do is, while the propeller blade is spinning, this gear would actually interrupt the firing process of the machine gun so that every time a bullet was fired, it would have enough time to clear the propeller before it would spin again. So that way guns could now be mounted on the front of a plane, and you can engage directly using basically your propeller as your sight. Also introduced in the era of the ace, where pilots would down 5 or more enemies and becoming aces, national heroes, and propaganda icons. Two-seater biplanes conducted artillery spotting, light bombing raids, with planes dropping grenades and small bombs by hand out of the cockpit, targeting trenches and supply depots. And most biplanes averaged about 60 to 100 miles an hour in speed.
And I feel like that kind of gives a good idea as well of like how fast were biplanes. Because, if you've been to an air show, you've probably seen a biplane, but I'm guessing very few people in 2025 have seen a biplane just flying
Right.
around. And it's just really interesting to think that if you're on the interstate going the speed limit of 70, you're going about as fast, if not faster, than the average speed of early biplanes. That's crazy to think about.
Even in Texas or in many other parts of the country as well, when you're driving down an old country road and you'll see a crop duster, a lot of the times they're still propeller-driven planes. they're not going super fast. You could see them coming a mile away, and you can, I mean, in a modern automobile, you're gonna be able to outrun them or, outflank or anything like that. But at the time, I mean, we're talking about going in the span of just, I don't know, uh, a, like less than 100 years. You're going from we can fill something up and float to now we can cut through the skies at nearly 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour, and drop stuff on the enemy. Like it's such huge, it's such a gigantic leap in technology that, like, I mean, we're glossing over it a little bit, but it's one of those times where the technology just kind of overtakes humanity and we really don't know like where we stand with it.
Absolutely.
So
Wood and
similarly,
canvas. Go ahead.
this brings up the next topic, obviously. So we go from biplanes to what?
To jets.
Jets.
Wood and canvas had taken humans higher than ever before, but metal and engines would take them even higher and faster. Soon the sky wouldn't just belong to pilots, but to machines. In the late stages of World War II, Germany unveiled the Messerschmitt Me 262, the world's first operational jet fighter.
I'm sure
Its
you're
top
Messerschmitt,
speed,
right? Golly.
its top speed was over 540 miles per hour, nearly twice that of Allied propeller planes. Its arrival was too late to change the war, but changed aviation forever. Britain would follow with the Gloster Meteor, and it was used mainly to intercept German V-1 flying bombs.
That's right. So we have the P-51 Mustang at the time, which was comparatively extremely fast. We're talking going 100 plus miles an hour in that bad boy. And for close air support, for reconnaissance, things like that, such a game changer. And for the Germans to be developing this jet technology at the time was it's revolutionary. And I know it really is kind of glossed over once again. I think I'm going to say that time and time again, but you know, we look at history and how our technology evolves and how when we're not ready for it, it takes that next leap because things happen gradually and then suddenly. So if you want to break it down, we basically have, you know, in World War One, we have the Psalm, we have modern warfare thrust upon man. In the Civil War, we have uh, that type of urban and rural warfare brought upon a civilian populace in the United States for the very first time. And that kind of brutality kind of changed the way that we fight wars forever. And then we are standing on a new one, and we're going to get to it at the precipice of drone warfare, which we're seeing played out in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. So it's I know we're glossing over a lot of these things. We're kind of giving you like a greatest hits, but we want to hit home the fact that these are the changing times of the world, and we should. I don't want to say count ourselves lucky, but we should really take note about where we're standing and where we came from.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. No, you said it great. Yeah, with this, to steal a line from Randall, like we are glossing over a lot, but maybe some of these topics will go into separate podcast episodes. But the main focus of this is, right, we're moving through the history. Like, I like to know, how do we get from point A to point B? And so with the evolution of aerial combat, how are we going from flying kites to now you got some dude in the back of a truck with some goggles on, just like flying bombs into people at however fast drones move, or quadcopters.
Ironically, we're back to trench warfare as well. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So if we're gonna take this and move into like the Cold War, turns the sky into a chessboard of speed and reach. The Berlin airlift comes to mind. Aerial supremacy, superiority really comes into its own at this time. America flexing its logistics powers because, young lieutenants, they like to talk about tactics. Generals, they like to talk about logistics, and logistics wins wars. So, I mean, I know that wasn't necessarily a hot conflict, but this is where America really starts to come into its own. And then during the Korean War, we're going kind of backwards there, but the first jet versus jet battle took place with the F-86 Sabre going against the MiG-15, the famous Soviet MiGs. They were so maneuverable, so fast, ahead of their time. And they saw action once again in Vietnam War. It introduced the rise of the multi-role fighters, such as the F-4 Phantom II, carrying radar-guided missiles, air-to-ground payloads. And strategy shifted from individual dogfights to beyond visual range engagements using radar-guided munitions. And the term dogfight remained, but real combat often happened at a distance of 20 to 40 miles. This is so true. So while America, like I said, in the Cold War came into its own logistically, in their fighters, they're like, we don't need to go super fast. We don't need a dogfight. We don't need to be 1v1. We can engage the enemy from beyond the horizon. But as we can see in every age, we have problems with the hierarchy of the military, right? We have rules of engagement. We have, there's secrets on top of secrets on top of movements on top of movements. So for whatever reason, the rules of engagements precluded the F-4s from engaging at a distance, and they had to have visual confirmation. There was a bunch of different things with radar, and it really kind of was a quagmire in the Vietnam era for, aerial warfare. But just to move on, I know I actually love that portion of history, so I'm just going to throw that at you guys. But we're going to transition from jets to helicopters. Tyler.
Jets conquered altitude and speed, but they couldn't hover, land in a clearing, or pull a wounded soldier, can't talk today, out of a firefight. And that's where helicopters became an important asset. The first practical helicopter was the Sikorsky R-4 in 1942, serving briefly in World War II for rescue and observation. Rotary wing flight offered vertical takeoff and landing with no runway required. The Korean War, the medevac revolution, the Bell 47 pioneered aeromedical evacuation. Wounded troops could be extracted from terrain unreachable by trucks, cutting mortality rates by nearly 40%. With the Vietnam War, the helicopter war, the UH-1 Huey became the symbol of Vietnam. It was a troop transport, medevac, and gunship all in one. Air cavalry tactics allowed rapid assaults, resupply, and extraction deep behind enemy lines. The AH-1 Cobra.
Made famous by the television show MASH back in the 60s.
Man.
We had a Korean War era comedy show, right? And the Huey was a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a throwback for me too. When I was growing up, my dad had MASH DVDs. And so
yes.
even though I was born in 2001, I think I watched the first 2 seasons of MASH.
I mean, it still holds up. It's really fun to watch. I mean, I watched it on Nick at Night on TV as a kid. Super fun stuff. But we should talk about the AH-1 Cobra, one of my favorite helicopters.
Absolutely. The AH-1 Cobra introduced the concept of a dedicated attack helicopter, pairing with Hueys for escort and fire support. Later, the AH-64 Apache extended that legacy into modern warfare with night vision targeting and Hellfire missiles. And just a little trivia fact, there's some other stuff that goes into the nickname of Dust Off, but the nickname Dust Off for medevac came from the clouds of dust my bad. It would come from the clouds of dust, medevac flights, there we go, would kick up upon landing. And
I mean, that obviously makes sense, like rotor wash, things like that.
Yeah, I meant to read more into it, and I didn't. I think the other half of the name comes from the medical unit that was there at the time. But that was the primary thing was dust off is just all the dust it would kick up upon landing.
I mean, there's one
Then,
thing that I did forget to do while we've been talking about
what was that?
the history of aerial warfare. Um,
Oh, putting
is
up
to show the
images.
pictures,
Yeah,
which is great because now we can do it. So we have our 200 BC. We have our kites, and moving on, there's our balloons, right? The French l'Antara, our biplanes, beautiful canvas and wood. It's amazing that they basically strapped a a circular engine to a bunch of wood and canvas and made it fly. It's insane. And here's our first jets. I believe that's the Messerschmitt.
I believe it is as well. Yeah.
Then we have our Hueys, our baby Hueys. Still beautiful helicopters to this day.
I love the sound they make. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. I
And
forget what this
then
bad boy is.
we're about to get into that. That's the Kettering
Ooh,
Bug.
perfect. So
So,
we're getting into like unmanned stuff now, right?
yeah, absolutely. Helicopters brought pilots closer to the fight, but what if we could remove the pilot entirely? That question had been asked long before drones ever buzzed in the sky. So, World War I experiments, 1918. The Kettering Bug was a wooden, paper-winged craft powered by a 40-horsepower engine. It was designed as a flying bomb using a preset gyroscope to fly a fixed distance, and after reaching that fixed distance, it would then dive down onto the target. It was way too unreliable for combat, but it did prove that pilotless attacks were possible.
That kind of reminds me of what they did in World War II with the first kind of uh, uh, unmanned ballistic missiles. I mean, they weren't fully ballistic; they weren't going like too far, but they had pigeons in them or chickens. Like I think it was pigeons. They would teach the pigeons to
Oh,
peck
yeah.
at the pictures of ships so that it would control the gyroscope inside and go and hit them. So it's like an early version of that, but like 30 years earlier.
Man.
So World War II
Then,
experiments in 1941, the radio plane OQ-2 was the first mass-produced UAV, unmanned aerial vehicle, with 15,000 being built as gunnery targets. And one, of course, we have the V-1 Buzz bomb from Germany in World War II, pulse jet-powered cruise missile, nicknamed the Doodle Bug. Like likely it's the predecessor to the V2 rocket, the first ballistic missile. Over 1,300 hit London in the Battle of Britain. It's crazy. Like Werner von Braun came up with this, right? He was a rocket scientist back in the day, and it's it's interesting that all of these things, like the V2 rocket surely would have been considered an unmanned aerial vehicle before we even had the category of ballistic missiles, right? Like nobody knew what a ballistic missile was. We just know that there's not a person piloting this, and we're sending it to a predetermined place, right? Not even pigeons, like we said before. There's not even a pigeon in this thing. Um, and it's crazy that this would have been considered a drone by the standards of the time, but now we consider it something completely different because we have an entire different section in the in the Walmart of warfighting, right?
absolutely. And an honorable mention I want to throw in there for World War II is Project Aphrodite. You know, as I was doing research into this topic of the evolution of aerial warfare, and as I started researching this and looking at it, I just felt extra American and extra patriotic, right? So this
Hmm.
is Project Aphrodite. We have B-17 bombers, and they're used in bombing runs. Some dude figured, hey, you know what? What if we use the bomber as a bomb? And so the US converted B-17 bombers packed with explosives, guided remotely after the crew bailed out. So From the impression I get is they would rig up the B-17 bomber. It would start to take off with the crew inside, and then right before it
Jeez.
actually took off, the crew would bail out.
So it's
This
like
was extremely dangerous and largely unsuccessful.
a mixture between a kamikaze and a vehicle-borne IED.
Basically, yeah.
That's insane to me. My goodness.
Moving
So
into the Cold War, what were you going to say?
I was going to ask about the Cold War.
Yeah. The Ryan Firebee, 1951. It became the first reliable jet-powered recon drone, and they would be recovered by parachute. They were used in Vietnam to photograph SAM sites and enemy positions where manned flights were too risky. So I think this is kind of like, we're now getting into the point of history, 1951, where we have a drone, you know?
An actual drone. Like what we would
Yeah.
consider today a drone. I think
The
we have our
US,
V2. There we go.
I believe that's the V2, yeah.
Yep.
The U.S. Navy's Lightning Bug program flew over 3,000 missions, proving that unmanned recon was finally feasible. Should be, that's the B-17. Should
That's
be
the
a picture.
B-17 kamikaze right there.
That is
There we
the
go.
Firebee. And then there should be a picture of the Lightning Bug. Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
They'd
There's our
be
lightning bug.
launched from ships. Yeah.
Interesting. So that's like the very first actual, what we would consider today, a UAV.
Yeah.
And what? How? I
That
mean,
and the Firebee. Or the, Firebee.
interesting. So how far back do like drones go? Like, you know, like what we would consider today to be a drone, like an unmanned aerial vehicle.
Yeah, decades of trial and error led to one breakthrough moment, a small Israeli drone that would prove the concept once and for all, the Israeli Pioneer drone. After heavy aircraft losses during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel sought a way to scout and distract enemy air defenses without risking pilots. Engineers developed a lightweight UAV capable of streaming real-time video back to operators, the birth of modern battlefield ISR.
Okay, so not only do we have it serves a dual purpose, right? So we're using it for ISR and we're using it to lure in other aero assets to keep them occupied while we're doing other operations, right? That's pretty cool. So is this true that it resulted in zero aircrew losses while it was being employed?
I believe so, yeah. The
That's what this paper says that
1982.
I was reading this paper, and that's what that says right there. It says it right there. That's crazy.
The 1982 Lebanon War. Israel used the Mastiff and Scout drones to map Syrian SAM sites and guide manned aircraft strikes. The results were decisive. Israel destroyed 19 Syrian SAM batteries and 80 plus aircraft with zero aircrew losses.
That's what I
This
thought.
success proved that unmanned systems could tip air superiority.
So now we're getting to the point where it's actually tipping the scale, right? We're actually seeing like positive results. It's not just an experiment anymore. We're actually able to implement these things effectively and to have a positive outcome for in warfare.
Yeah, absolutely. Then we have the RQ-2 Pioneer, 1985. Jointly developed by Israel Aircraft Industries and the U.S. Navy/Marine Corps.
Yep.
It provided real-time reconnaissance and artillery spotting during Operation Desert Storm. Famously, An Iraqi unit surrendered to a Pioneer drone after watching it circle overhead. This was the first known surrender to a robot or something mechanical.
Not the last time, but definitely the first time. So it comes. So we have this giant technical innovation, right? We have real-time video transmissions via analog link, a catapult launch, and a net recovery from ships, which is pretty standard on most aircraft carriers, right? Operated at 15,000 feet, with the endurance to last up to 5 hours, which I know that we see loitering a lot longer in more modern drones, but this is a really long time back then. As countermeasures on it, chaff. Early attempts at radar detection and jamming, but the Pioneer's small radar cross section made it really difficult to target anyway, because it was, it's like our modern stealth fighters are made in a very specific way so that they can kind of bounce the smallest amount of radar signal back, and these were already so small and made out of such light materials that they were barely showing up as it was. The adversaries learn to conceal heat sources and electronic emissions to avoid detection, so you're not seeing the exhaust, right? And the Pioneer was still in service as late as 2007, make it one of the longest operating drones in U.S. inventory. So this thing made it from Desert Storm to GWAT, which is absolutely insane.
That's crazy. And as I was looking at that, there's different sources. Some saying it was it discontinued service 2001. There's a couple reports saying 2003. There's a couple saying 2007. I just went with 2007 because there's more official documentation on it being 2007. But the main point is, this thing, like, it was just so revolutionary, so good that militaries just kept it just in their back pocket for what is that, like 30 years?
Yeah, like kind of like the Warthog. They keep trying to get rid of it, but nothing beats, a a Gatling gun with a plane built around it for close air support. You know what I mean? Like, just something about it. It's just so good. So now we're getting into the stuff that most of us will start to recognize a little bit better, right?
Yeah, the Call of Duty kill streaks.
Yeah, we're talking about predators, boo.
The Pioneer drone proved that drones could fight and win, but it was still a specialized tool. Fast forward to today, and drones are being implemented in conflict daily. The MQ-1 Predator. What it brought was long-endurance ISR with the ability to strike. The first time a remotely piloted system could loiter for hours and then deliver a precision weapon.
So cool. I mean, Predator drones are so awesome. I mean, unless you're at a wedding in Yemen. Other than that, Predator drones are awesome. They're so cool. Sorry, I had to get that in there.
The Predator first entered operational use in the mid-1990s and was modified to fire AGM-114 Hellfire missiles in 2001, creating the modern ISR strike model. For tactics, there is persistent overwatch, time on target, meaning loiter until positive ID, and the ability to hand off strikes from remote operators, changing the tempo of counterinsurgency and counterterrorism operations.
Right. The Predator turns surveillance into a strike that you can watch someone hours and hours and hours on end and then just pull the trigger from behind a desk, where you could have multiple operators swapping out under the loiter life of this thing, right? It could go for like 14, 15 hours before it has to come down, refuel. Most of the time they brought them down is to rearm, right? They'd be going through strike after strike after strike. So you could go through multiple operators watching one AO for hours and hours, days on end, pretty much. And it's just like it's like doing duty. It's like you're doing barracks duty. And it's like, all right, same old. Here's the duty logbook. It's all on you now. So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy that like the operators for some of these they were nowhere near the drones, right? Like
No, not at all.
You could have a Predator in the Middle East, and then like the actual operator or operators were just stateside. And just like you said, like rotating through duty, like they might sit in or sit behind like the controls for like however many hours. And it's like, all right, my shift's over. And then another person just rotates in and just takes charge of the predator.
Plug and play, baby. And then we upgrade. We upgrade from MQ1 to the MQ9er. Oh yeah. This is the bad boy right here. So it brought greater speed, altitude, payload, and integrated ISR and strike systems. And the Reaper was designed as a purpose-built hunter-killer, a long-endurance ISR platform. I think that the concerning part for me is that they took the term hunter-killer from the Terminator movies, and then they made it real. It's a little too close for me. The capabilities had multi-sensor targeting, heavier munitions, longer loiter times, even longer, and integrated into joint targeting chains like close air support, convoy overwatch, and strike coordination. So basically, you could put one of these things up, and it would seamlessly do multiple things at one time, right? So anything in a certain AO, everybody knew what assets we have in the air. If you have a convoy from here to here, they're like, all right, this asset's going to be in there from this stuff. And it's just built into your brief. If you're on the ground and you're crossing through this AO and you know that you're going to have overlapping predator drones. Like it was just part and parcel, right? So these things were the eye in the sky. They were watching everything. They were, and now we have the ability to like process all this extra data and cover more than just like one single mission at a time. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And then
actually, do you real quick, do you have any personal experience with like drones while you're overseas?
I know that they were always part of the brief. Not the predator specifically, but one time we did have some people following us while we were doing a night convoy while we were just like troop movement, going back to TQ to leave the country finally. And we had some people following us, and they radioed to some super stallions who flew out and did like, the left. They did basically the Dale Earnhardt. They're just like, yeah, we're just gonna left turn on you guys and just duh, 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 duh. And we watched them blow up a few trucks in the distance. And I mean, we're talking like it's pitch. You know how dark it's pitch dark out there, and just watch tracer rounds hit a bunch of vehicles that were following us, and they're like, ah, you're all clear. But during the day, obviously, they were always like, yeah, we know if you see anything, if you need anything, call it up, and they would move it through the chain of command. It was actually so seamless that like you never wanted to just like call something out just to call it out, but it was so seamless that it would only take minutes for you to move it up to the chain to the regimental combat team, and they would talk to whatever drone was in the AO, and that guy's probably sitting in Nevada or Utah or something. He's like, oh, let me go check this out. So like it really did kind of change the speed of intel. It changed the speed of any kind of operation on the ground and how quickly we could react, or they could react to something that was happening in a completely different continent on the other side of the ocean.
Man.
It didn't just watch the battlefield, it could hunt on command, basically.
And then, there's other honorable mentions. Like there's way more drones than what we've kind of discussed and talked through with the history of aerial combat. And some honorable mentions that come to mind is the Raven, which I believe is still in use.
Yep.
The Switchblade, which is another just very, makes me feel patriotic. I think
it's like on the squad level, right? That's like more of a on the squad or fire team level. Much smaller.
And I think I could be wrong of some of the details I have for this, but I believe it was like a drone with a block of C4 that'd be launched out of a mortar tube and then like remotely controlled, and then they just fly it.
Oh, you're talking about the Switchblade. I was talking about
wherever.
the Raven, but yeah, I mean,
Oh, okay.
same thing. Like I remember one time, one of my buddies who is a soldier, he was in Afghanistan at the same time I was in Iraq, and he was saying that they was so bored that the command team would use the Raven to see if they were wearing like their PPE while they were on patrol, which is
It's a great
exactly
use.
that's exactly what it was meant to do.
It's a great
Sorry.
use for the Raven.
Oh, terrible.
But we're gonna move on from. We've taken up enough time
Yeah,
talking
sorry.
about the evolution of history of aerial combat. Now we're gonna get into what we're seeing now. Cheap and tactical drones, the decentralization of air power. The mass production and commercial components mean cheap, replaceable air assets for squads and militias. Small quadcopters, tactical hand-launched UAS such as the Raven,
Boomer.
loitering munitions, and FPV kamikaze drones have put organic air power into the hands of platoons and brigades, and even further down, like at the squad level. FPV drones are small, fast, one-way strike platforms flown with a first-person camera. They've proved especially deadly in close terrain and urban fights because of their speed, maneuverability, and low radar profile. Swedish FOI analysts and other OPE reports document the rise in tactics of FPV systems in Ukraine. And yeah, dude, just like going on to YouTube and pulling up any video of like
Live leak, right?
yeah, like drone combat going on in Ukraine right now, and it is scary how fast and maneuverable those drones are.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. We've moved from like we went briefly through like the large technological changes in aerial warfare, organized warfare, right? And we started out with kites and we're ending with single man drones. And the way that warfare has changed on the ground is also kind of going backwards to where it's like we have one man, one kite, we have one man, one drone, and now we're also seeing trench warfare make a comeback after it was proven to be quite useless in in the early 19s. So this technology, it kind of it every time we have a large move forward in technology and then our techniques catch up with it, we find that sometimes we have to adopt older techniques in order to combat newer technology. It's absolutely insane. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but um you know like for instance, one way to counteract being tracked online with your with your credit card is to use cash. It's like, well, people don't really use cash anymore. Everybody uses credit cards. It's like, well, yeah, we have this old technology called, currency, and it works really, really well. So, I mean, it's just a simple example. So nowadays you don't need a base. You don't need like a pilot that's got hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of flight time, and maintenance and understanding, airframe and science and all this other stuff, math, whatever. You don't need you don't need somewhere to land. You don't need an airstrip, anything like that. You can just be out in the wild, throw something up, throw on a pair of goggles, and you can take out an entire squad.
Yeah, and real quick, it is crazy the similarities of like what we can see in the past in history and what we can see in the modern day. And that's kind of why I wanted us to, with this topic, first walk through the evolution of aerial combat, right? So I wasn't there in 200 BC in ancient China,
I was.
but I can kind of assume that like if I'm at like a fortification and I'm aware that like war kites are a thing, and I see a kite up in the sky slowly coming towards me if the conditions are good. You know, if I'm able to see it or start walking out there, I can definitely trace that silk string or line back to like who's flying the kite, who's letting go of the string and kind of making it less taut. Fiber optic drones, you know, just
Oh, exactly.
fall.
That's kind of where I
Yeah,
was trying to go. I was trying to like bridge that gap. But like I see
yeah,
exactly what you're trying to say. Like now we have so the countermeasures that come with that. right? With drones that are wired, they can't be stopped by by wireless countermeasures because they're wired. So it's like basically throwing out a giant fishing line uh, with a drone attached to it that cannot be taken down wirelessly. It's such a scary prospect. But also, I mean, once again, that also gives you your limitations, right? You have to be in a stationary position, otherwise it's not going to work, right? It has to be powered, so you have to have some sort of power source. So with every leap forward in technology and in technique, it also comes with limitations. And as we come up with countermeasures, those countermeasures also have limitations as well. So if we're talking just specifically and kind of like academically about like how these technologies work and how they affect us, or anybody that's going to be in on a battlefield, I think it makes sense to talk about like how they're being implemented, like in what density, like saturations and swarms, right? I mean, attackers mixing loitering with loitering munitions with FPVs and larger UAVs to overwhelm defenses. Kind of like you never know which one's going to hit you. You're going to get a left. You're going to get a right. Are they going to switch stances on you? Are they going to come with the big guns, with the little guns? So it kind of makes it impossible to defend, right?
It's real quick. It's crazy just what they're capable of using these drones for. I was on X one day and I saw this video populate and I was like, dude, is this real? And I forget which side it was. I forget if it was Russia that did it or if it was Ukraine that did it. I think it was Russia doing it to Ukraine. They attached, I think it was like a canister of thermite, and they were flying over wooded positions, and just like the enemies or friendlies, they were, I forget like who was doing what, but there's a force in the woods. There's a force flying a drone of thermite, and they were flying over the tree line, just setting it on fire to kind of like burn them out.
Oh.
It's crazy to me.
So once again, we're using old techniques with new technology, right? Burn them out, smoke them out. Because there's only a couple ways you can take out some of these drones. They're extremely they're extremely fast. They're extremely maneuverable. They're really, really hard to nail down. So you either have to have an electronic warfare jamming system, which on its own is going to take its own maintenance, its own upkeep. To keep them running, somebody has to be trained how to use it correctly, or you have to use old school, what would be called kinetic intercepts, shotgun rounds, really well placed rifle rounds. I don't know, nets. I don't know. I don't have anything that's confirming that, but I'm sure that there's some sort of, blanket projectile that's shot out, like maybe a net gun or something, or other drones. God forbid you have to fight fire with fire, a drone on drone. Like it's getting absolutely insane. And how do you hide from that as a squad or as an individual? I mean, we're talking going back to the basics of thermal camouflage, physical camouflage, hardening your positions. What engineers? What are the basics of engineering? Mobility, counter mobility, and survivability, right? This falls under survivability. How well can you hide? And if you can't hide, how hard can you make your position? With preventments and whatnot, with whatever materials you have at your disposal. I guess.
Hey, I just want to interject real quick
Please.
because I got curious. Should have thrown this in the notes, but yeah, it looks like back in 2024, I think last
way
year,
back in 2024.
November 4th of 2024. Yeah, they were attaching, they're kind of rigging something up to the drones, but they had net holders and net launchers, and they were taking down other drones with nets. Yeah. Yeah, I
We
knew that
knew it.
sounded familiar. Yeah.
So once again, we're kind of in the murky part of uh the history of aerial warfare. Like we're in the part where we're kind of like partially half guessing, and also we have broken and incomplete data and intel on what's going on, what's happening, where it's coming from, where it's going. We would it is, I mean, best guess. And for those of us that have, been to Poland, like you have, Brown, have been as close to the front line as you can get in that place. I mean, it's it's got to be frightening. It's got to be like it's worse than being on a camp and you hear the air raid siren. We get plenty of warning when mortars come because it's such an old thing and they know where they're at anyway. But it's a completely different thing to hear that little zzz and is today the day? Is now my time?
Yeah, absolutely. Poland was a pretty good time, but it was a realistic. I'm trying to
It's like
find the
a
word.
modern war zone, because my experience is creeping up on 20 years old. So the word modern doesn't really describe my experience anymore.
I guess that's the word I was looking for is expectation. I guess like maybe it was in the back of some of our minds of like, I'm trying to think. I think we weren't like a crazy distance. I think maybe like 4 or 5 hours from the border, but like you can definitely fly a drone like that
Hmm.
distance because that'd be like driving time. So flying
Yeah.
time would be way shorter. But I mean that does add kind of a new element to like psychological warfare and like the psychological impact of
Yeah, bringing that back, right? Going
yeah.
all the way back, like what, and to, no pun intended, to tie everything back to the kites, right? It for the the exact same way that those kites are being used, the exact same way that these drones are being used, and that's what we were trying to highlight. There is a psychological component to it, even if it's not deliberate. It is affecting morale. It is affecting everybody that is forward in those areas. Um, and that brings up questions of ethics, like when we first started talking about the predator systems, when we have extended loiter times, and we have people swapping out, basically running shifts like they're at a McDonald's, and having a payload attached, and they just kind of take over the stick and just continue watching the AO until something changes, right? Like, what kind of ethical questions does that bring? Like, we're not saying we're the arbiters of it, but there are those underlying ethical questions. They make films about it, they write books about it. One that comes to mind specifically is and mind you, it's mostly propaganda, but there's an Ethan Hawke film called Good Kill, and he plays he's a former pilot turned drone pilot, and he is meant to be a mentor to these this new generation of computer kids, drone pilots, and he's trying to like impose on them this weight, that there's an ethical weight to this thing, which does exist. I mean, we can't separate ethics from war completely, especially in the United States, since that's how we fight wars. We have always been, well, maybe not always, we have always tried to live up to those ethical standards as a military, right? And when we fall short, we pay the price, and and we're not here to be the judges one side or the other. Just it it does kind of disconnect you if you can just press a button, do it right. um and then I mean, and the only thing that the higher ups are thinking is, what's the cost? The asymmetry between the loss of life is insane. Like, we spend $150 on this, robot kamikaze, and we can kill like 20 dudes. Like, it's insane. It's crazy how cheap it is. How cheap life becomes at that point. And then scaling. Like, what does that mean we're just going to make the drones bigger again? Are we going to do the same thing that cell phones did, where we made them as small as we possibly could, and then now we're just going to go back to making them big again? Like, who knows? Sorry, that's just
Yeah, well, I
off
think
the
there's
dome.
some interesting capabilities for. I don't know if this is like it's already becoming a thing, or if it's already a thing, or maybe it's something that's being looked at. But I know right now, it, what runs through my mind is I think it'd be interesting if there was a drone rigged up in such a way, like a drone that could carry 200 or 300 pounds. Like you have a soldier that goes down,
Mhm.
and you rig them up on like a litter, and then a drone just flies overhead,
Oh,
picks them up, and is able to just move them.
and that's
That
exactly what
kind
we're
of came
talking
to
about with
mind.
techniques. Techniques over
Yeah,
technology, right?
yeah, that came to mind when you said like making them bigger.
Yeah, making them bigger. I mean, if Amazon is talking about using drones to drop packages, why can't we pick up packages, right? Like, why can't we have them doing basic medevac on the squad level? Because once again, I mean, I know I glossed over it, but cost asymmetry, like the components are cheap. It doesn't cost a lot to get these in the air. Um, if we actually put anything behind it, America's always been a manufacturing boon when it comes to conflict. So I don't see that being a problem with creating this kind of technology to where we can actually use it for something that's a little bit more altruistic, right? For getting the wounded off the battlefield, for getting them to an aid station, and ceasing the loss of life, rather than just turning them into variable sized IEDs.
We can't be too far off. I just looked it up. Um,
I mean, I've
yeah,
seen those
there's not
quadcopters
a
that are commercially available that like a quadcopter that can fly, about 100 feet off the ground, and they're not FAA compliant. Like you can just do whatever you want.
so I'm not seeing anything about drones directly just picking someone up and like rescuing them from the battlefield. But I'm not gonna watch the video. But apparently, there is a Ukrainian soldier that was surrounded by enemies, and a drone dropped him a 42 kilogram bike, and they got out of there. That's crazy.
Oh, really?
Just like on demand supply drops. Yeah,
There you go.
having that capability,
Yeah,
just
you no
asset.
longer
Yeah.
need you know, a C-130 to drop a payload to, assets on the ground. Like, and also we all know, I mean, the people listening, you and I both know, like all of the paperwork and the logistics and the amount of personnel and fuel and everything that it takes to get something like that done, where you can just go, hey, go grab number 65 over there and send him over there. And if it gets shot down, it gets shot down. It's just a bike. It's
Mm.
insane. Well, we are creeping up on the end of our time here. We're sitting at right about an hour. Tyler, I would ask for your last thoughts before we close it out.
Yeah. Well, my main thoughts mainly pertain to the podcast itself. This is episode 1 of the Rank and File podcast. If we try to do our due diligence, do our research appropriately, if we misspoke or we got anything wrong, please let us know, and we can fix
Absolutely.
that or add a note. And yeah, let us know what you guys want to see and just what you want us to talk about.
Yeah, if you think we missed anything, we glossed over something that was like a larger part of, the vertical envelopment doctrine with helicopters. I know we did spend a lot of time on them, but like
Mhm.
this is extremely well researched by a future officer in the United States Army. You know what I'm saying? Like this is not bad stuff. Like I think we got A to B to C to D, soup to
We did
nuts,
go,
right?
yeah, we did go from A to B.
For sure. And even though I did make a few off color comments, I hope that Pete Hegseth, I'm sorry, I apologize, sir, sir, my captain, oh captain, my captain, please spare me. I promise I'm losing weight. And I will see you on the next one. Is that all good for you, Tyler?
Yeah, that's good.
2 Tylers, 1 podcast. Signing off.